us here today, and she is a diet researcher and also senior professor at Department of Public Health at the University in Copenhagen. And she's going to give us some new angles on our food and what diets should really consist of. So let's give it up for Anne Tjønneland, who is accompanied by Mats Meinecke as they're having a live podcast. So please give them a round of applause up on stage.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would actually just start by saying that this is a talk which is powered by DGI, who are responsible for helping us with Copenhagen Health Week, with Øksnehallen. And so this partnership is very meaningful to us, very meaningful to DGI. And so DGI is here to disseminate more knowledge about health, helping clubs, introducing more health into the different elements of their work. So just wanted to say a big thank you to DGI for letting us be here today and inviting Anne Tjønneland to talk a little bit about diet and ultra-processed foods. So I'll start by asking you, okay, the history of ultra-processed food or our diet in general, if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I have studied diet for many years, 35 years I think, and it has been very much on the food items, whole grain, meats. But what happens within the last couple of decades is actually that our food has changed. And one of the evidence for that is that even though we know what we should eat, we get more and more obese, and that happens in all of the westernized countries. This is a graph from the US, which are the most example where we would not like to go. And what you can see with the dotted line is that they are getting more and more obese from 2000 and up to 2018, even though they have not increased the intake of calories. For many years we said, well, you just have to reduce your number of calories, then you will not get obese and have all the diseases that follows together with the obesity, the cardiovascular disease, cancer and type 2 diabetes, and a lot of other diseases. But what this shows is there's something else going on with our diet. You just heard, if you heard the speaker before, what kind of healthy diet, but we have to look also what has been done to the diet that we eat. And that had changed a lot. And it had changed during some decades in the US, but in some southern American countries like Brazil, it changed very fast. The food industry comes in and these people have gone from traditional diet to the food industry produced diet in very short timeline. And that shows very fast on the population. They get more obese. So there has been this change, and that really said, okay, there's something about the way we're processing our diet that really makes some difference in how our body receives the diet. So one of the things that happens is that they are not eating the whole vegetables or the whole meat, good meat. They are actually, in the industry, they are putting this apart, the different type, and then putting together in this ultra-processed diets. And that's one of the way that what happens in our body. This is glucose. This is a person who have an increasing glucose in the blood during the years. And if we look at the insulin, for getting the glucose into the cells, we need insulin that is produced in the pancreatic. And as you can see here, many years before the blood glucose increased, we have an increase in the insulin level. And first when you can see here, when the insulin can't follow and get the glucose low, it starts to increase. That's when we get the insulin resistance, and then we get an increased glucose level. And that is one of the mechanisms that this ultra-processed diet does in our body. We get the insulin resistance, we get the type 2 diabetes. And that what was this researcher back in Brazil, he saw and he wondered what is happening in with the diet in this country. Because these people were not obese before, but when they started to eat the westernized diet, this is what happened to them. And then follow all the other chronic diseases. Actually, there was a publication a few months ago that showed that 32 different diseases is increasing due to this ultra-processed diet. So that was the long answer for your first question. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. So just let's go ahead and have it the next slide as well.
Yeah. This is how this researcher in Brazil, he said, okay, we have to look at the diet and what is the dangerous or what is the diet who is increasing the disease level in this population. And what he saw was he could actually put it into 4 categories. In the first category, this is the NOVA classification. In the first, this is unprocessed. It's when you buy a vegetable or something else, a fish or milk. And group 2 is what you put into the diet could be oils. Group 3 is processed foods. That's how you can process your diet back in your kitchen. And group 4 is the ultra-processed, where you use some kind of processing that you don't have in your own kitchen, and you put substances in your diet that you also don't have in your kitchen. And what he did, and what we are using in many of the scientific studies that we are conducting now, is to look at this category 4 and see how does that increase your risk of different diseases.
One of the things we actually discussed before going on stage is, so one thing is the ultra-processed food, but one of the things we talked about is this whole food pyramid that we've used for many years in Denmark, where some people say is the biggest letdown of society on how to eat correctly. Do you share that view?
No, I don't. The food, we have to bury the old food pyramid, because that was based on a mistake. And the mistake was that some researchers said, okay, it's the fat in the diet that's the big enemy here. And what do you do as an industry if you have to remove the fat? You have to put something else in the diet, and the protein is always almost the same, so it's sugar. So more than 70% of the food you buy in the US there has been put sugar in it. And that's really responsible for all the obesity and the diseases that we see in the US. And it's also coming here, although we have a lower level of the ultra-processed foods in Denmark compared to the US, but we don't want to get there.
So what are your feelings about the new recommendations? We had new recommendations coming out, I think, a few years back. Are they more in line as what we should eat, or?
We are slowly improving, but we are not there yet.
Okay.
A calorie is not a calorie. It depends where it comes from. It seems very logical, but it has been like that has been the dogma for many years, that it doesn't depend whether it's a fat calorie, whether it's a omega-3 fatty acid calorie, or it's a saturated fat calorie, or it's a simple sugar like glucose, for instance, and fructose. Fructose is also a simple sugar, but it's metabolized completely different to glucose in the body. Actually, 85% of the fructose that you eat goes into the liver and is changed to fat. So we get fatty liver disease, and that was what some American researcher experienced, that usually in the old days, those people with fatty liver disease, they were alcoholics. But now they see children, and they estimate that 25% of the children in the US actually have fatty liver disease. You can measure your fatty liver over there, I know. And that's because the diet in the US, they put fructose syrup in it. So the children eat this fructose and they get the fatty liver disease at the age of 5, 6, and they get obese and they get all these diseases. Yeah. With that.
But if we take a look at those, now it's saying we can't compare the difference. But what are the key components that make them different, like sugar compared to fat? What do we need to focus on when looking at our diet?
We need to focus on the right fat, like you heard before. we need the omega-3 fatty acids. We need the monounsaturated fatty acids, and we don't have to be as scared for the fat as we were 10, 20 years ago.
And where does that fat come from? If that was a dietary thing, is that fatty fish or oils or nuts?
Yeah,
okay.
and vegetables and
Okay.
Yeah. And then we have to look at the simple sugars. And the graph I showed before with the insulin resistance, this is due to the sugar that we eat or the fast carbohydrates. We need the whole grain, but we don't need the fast carbohydrates. And a lot of these ultra-processed food items, they do have a lot of sugar in it, and this fast, and you get this response. And if you eat during the day snacks, then you will have the high insulin the whole day, and then you will eventually, after years, get an increase in your blood sugar.
And I guess that's what we experience as normal people. We start our mornings after a bad night of sleep with spiking our insulin, then it dives. So we actually, our entire insulin level, increasing that over time. So the feeling I would get when I want my 2 o'clock coffee and snack, that my dive would increase, my sugar dive would be worse and worse over time.
Yeah, because you have the high insulin. And actually many people start their morning with a juice. Juice is pure fructose that go directly into your liver. So it's not better to drink a glass of juice. Maybe you get a little bit more vitamin C, but you will have the same spike as if you drink Coca-Cola, actually. You can eat the fruit, but eat it whole. Eat it as an apple or a pear or something.
Yeah, because something happens when we break down fruit, right?
Yeah.
So if we blend it or we mash it or whatever, it's back to getting that whole...
Yeah, and that's some new experience within the research world, that what you do to the food is really, really important. It's actually more important sometimes than what kind of food you eat.
So how I serve it is more important than what I'm actually eating. Yeah, because we have just had Umaro just talking about the difference between different, if it's keto or if it's vegan or if it's plant-based. It's more looking at, as I understand it, the whole foods of what we're doing.
Yeah, because as a human being, we can survive on many kinds of different foods. If you look at the Inuits in the north, they eat an animal-based diet. If you look at the Japanese people and other people in Asia, they have a very carbohydrate-rich diet, but they do it very well until the comes in with the ultra-processed food, and then it goes wrong.
But that also what I've seen some studies on is some countries, let's take the Inuits, who are used to this fatty diet, and some places are used to a very high carb diet. Let's take the Japanese culture. As soon as you introduce these different, you actually see a decrease in life expectancy of these, because it has such a hard consequence on what you feed your body.
So this is really also a fight with the food industry, because some of the large food companies, you can read histories how they sail into the Amazonas to the small villages, and they provide them with Kit Kat and other stuff, and you see this explosion in obesity among this population who never experienced the or the industrial produced food before. So this is really a worldwide fight against these very large companies who try to introduce their food, because you don't get money to sell broccoli or cauliflower. You get money when you have this ultra-processed foods and sell it to people, and they use a lot of money to see how it could be most tasty, and to see how you can crave a lot more than you that you need to, because
you're actually creating an addiction in people. We're actually almost So I mean, I know we've had some of the talks with other people, like now we have big tech through a social media or whatever. I guess it's the same with food companies that are creating, or supermarkets, how they build supermarkets to feed that eternal.
And the advertising for kids, for the morning products, is really with cartoons on, and I would like this Cocoa Pops, and I would like that. That's really a terrible start in the morning for kids.
Yeah, because one thing you mentioned, when you go down to the supermarket, there's actually one way to look at the different products you buy.
Yes. when you go into the supermarket and see what should I buy and what is the ultra processed, where are they? There's some rule of thumbs you can use. If there are more than 5 ingredients in a product, consider whether this is absolutely necessary or you should leave it on the shelf. Another thing is if one of the first 3 ingredients in a product is sugar, and sugar has 240 different names, and then they can name it once after another. It can have several names in the same product to see, so it comes. You know, the amount is the first. In a product, the largest amount comes first, and then you have it there. And to divide it into different names, the sugar, you can put it longer on the list, down the list. So don't buy it if sugar is one of the first 3. Don't buy it if it has more than 5 ingredients. At least look at it again and see, oh, is this good for me? And then we have this another, if your grandmother or tip-grandmother can't recognize this as food, don't buy it. Because then it's also. And if it has a health claim, have you ever seen a broccoli with a health claim? No. It's not necessary. We know it's healthy. But a lot of this stuff have a lot of health claims, 40% whole grain or vitamin this and that.
And we get it pushed in our information. Now it's whole grain, now it's plant-based, now it's whatever. And regardless of what ethics you go in with, it might not necessarily be healthy for your gut.
No. And that's another thing. Some of the emulsifiers, for instance, that has been studies on emulsifiers in ultra-processed food because you need that to get its this taste, full mouth taste. It's actually destroying your microbiome and the layer in your gut that protects the gut lining is destroyed by these emulsifiers. There's been animal studies showing that. So a lot of these. And then the industry can say to you, oh, if there's something that's really wrong, we can just change that. But we will never be able to justify it in that way. You have to experience this is the whole kind of food that is destroying you. Yeah.
And one of the things I joked about is I'd rather drink a Diet Coke because I think I don't get fat. But apparently these different replacements for sugar.
Artificial sweeteners. Yeah. Is also destroying your gut microbiome. So keep away from them as well.
Cool. So I know you have some recommendations on how to look at. Well, this is the comparison,
Yeah, this is just the energy intake. You can see Denmark is there, and the US and UK is far up. If we look at the percentage of calories that you get from the ultra-processed foods. So we are down the line, but we are not in the very end. So this is also try to prevent an increase, because we will see that if we don't do anything.
Yeah, and I guess we're also westernizing more and more. I mean, how many people are not taking the easy option? And I guess that's the hardest part of living a healthy lifestyle. Trying to get real food, trying to get whole foods it's actually harder to come by.
Yeah.
So would you expect us to climb it, or hopefully go the other way?
The industry would like us to have it, to let us climb up. And this is not just about because the industry, this is the snack food, but this is not only the snack food that's ultra processed. Of course, this is it's also the morning cereals. It's also some of the ready meals that you can buy, which is frozen. But it's actually also, this is an example for yogurt, which is healthy. You can see to the very left, you have a non-ultra processed. It's only the milk and the culture, the yogurt culture. But when you go down the level, you can see there's increasing level of processing. So this is, look at all the ingredients here. In this plant-based yogurt, it's not healthy for you. So don't buy that one. Buy the one with the least ingredients when you are shopping your yogurt.
So how far are you actually able to take it? If you were focusing on your way, how would you build your diet? Or how do you build your own diet through a day, morning to evening?
Well, Actually, I don't. I only drink coffee in the morning.
Okay.
You were hearing about fasting, but that I think you had some of the arguments for fasting at the last speaker. But and fasting is okay if it feels good for you. It's a way of reducing your calories. It's a way of giving your gut microbiome some rest. But it's not the golden kind of thing. It's not the goal in itself. If you can. But you should eat a savory diet. You should not eat a carbohydrate-rich diet without any. So at least you should have some yogurt or perhaps some eggs and some fat and protein together with the carbohydrates in the morning.
Okay. So sending these people down to the supermarket with your advice, what are they looking for, which would feed into the non-ultra-processed foods?
Well, go into the vegetable and buy a lot of vegetables. And then you can go in, you can buy fish, of course, and also meat. And when you buy meat, you have to prioritize which kind of meat. It should be best, it should be grass-fed meat, because we know we have this level between the omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. In the old days, we were eating almost the same omega-3 and omega-6, but nowadays we eat far more omega-6, and that's also because they put omega-6 fatty acids in the ultra-processed foods. So you have to level that down because it's inflammatory, while the omega-3 is protective. So in a way, you have to balance that as well. So it's a fat is not a fat. You have to look at the different fats, and you have to look at the different carbohydrates, and go for the whole grain and the starchy carbohydrates in the vegetables. Yeah.
So also one of the things I was looking into, because from my belief, and correct me if I'm wrong, going towards what you produce as a whole food diet actually also becomes an anti-inflammatory diet.
Yes, yes. They have so many names, but it's really, and there are so many different types you can go into, but this is really just eat real food. Eat the food that you can recognize as real food, and not go into the line with all the ultra-processed foods. But
I was just thinking about when I was brought up, and I'm a Danish citizen, is we would always base our food around a meat product. What are we having for dinner? We're having chicken, we're having beef, we're having etc. Is there some different way of thinking when you look at your food than that it's not focused around a meat diet, more maybe a plant-based focused diet?
Yeah, so I would focus around the plants, but I don't exclude the meat. No. And especially not, if you look at cancer risk, the four-leg meats might increase your risk of colon cancer, but the chicken and the fish is good for you actually.
Okay.
So, but the vegetables and the whole grain should be your basis, and then you could put something.
But that also taps into the new recommendations, right? The new diet recommendations. So actually looking into what we were doing politically is now we're changing it from a different perspective. Yeah. That's very interesting.
So.
So looking at that, any final recommendation? What are your 5 things to focus on with people who want to change the diet? Actually, I would change it differently. What are the things you would start to exclude from your diet, which you see a lot of in your experience? Like, stay away from this, stay away from this, stay away from this.
If you go back one step, it would be all the fast carbohydrates. If you go for the bread, you should go for the whole grain bread. Don't eat the white bread from the supermarket. It should be a sourdough bread. You can buy it at the bakery or make it yourself, because that's better than, because if you buy the bread in the supermarket, they have a long shelf life. You know, it's soft for 2 weeks in the supermarket. If you buy it in a good bakery with a sourdough, it will be dried out after 2 to 3 days. Yeah. So that gives you a sign that it doesn't contain some of these substances.
But that's funny, because that's actually one of the things with those instant dishes. We're living a busy lifestyle. Is we go down, and if something can last for 2 weeks in the refrigerator, it's probably has a lot of these different things that are not that good for me.
Another thing is, I was talking about these omega-6 fatty acids. Go for olive oil, also for frying actually. instead of using all the kernel oils that sunflower and granola, and only use the olive oil, because that's the best fatty acid distribution that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the people who have kids out there, because now you're mentioning this thing, is I bet we don't want, and we'll probably see it, because I have a 12-year-old, I have a 4-year-old, and what they're having advertised on a daily basis, or what they can get in a 7-Eleven or the local candy store or whatever. Even if I walk through a supermarket, it's in their vicinity.
Right. Yeah.
What are the things you see for kids? Like, okay, focus your energy on this.
Well, if you look, and that's also true for us, and in the US, is that a lot of the foods, the kid actually eating more ultra-processed than the grown-ups, because they start very early. After they start with this smoothie, fruit smoothie. It's pure fructose that we're putting into the small kids, 1 year old, but it's very convenient.
Yeah, you just squeeze out
and squeeze it, and this pure fructose, it goes directly into the liver. Give them a carrot, a cooked carrot, or a
but that just goes to show how hard it is and how susceptible we are to this, because I would say I go down and it says organic, it says vegan, it has a banana and a strawberry on it, but I'm actually doing my kid not a favor, at least.
No, and that's another thing. It's with vegans. It's if you buy this plant-based meat kind of thing, they have a lot of these substances, emulsifiers and different things. It's much better to either don't eat the meat or buy real meat and not this plant-based meat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not healthy at all.
So we're closing slowly off now, and one of the things I think we were agreeing on sitting before for our talk now is, I think the suggestion is try to eat real food.
Yeah.
If it doesn't look like real food, if you can't pick it off a tree, if you can't find it in nature, it's probably not something you should consider eating.
No. Stay away from group 4. Here. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure. I hope you all know a little bit more about ultra-processed food and what you need to stay away from. And thank you for joining us, Anne Tjønneland, and thank you for DGI for hosting us in this beautiful Øksnehallen.
Thank you.